presentation. If we can get it to go. All right. Welcome to another exciting day, the best day of the week as far as I'm concerned, because I'm here with you on our webinar discussing what? We are discussing credit banking and the search for the lost American dream. So, of course, I'm here at home, working from home in these times. So you might hear kids or dogs playing around. We are trying to wrangle them all up so that they are going to be well behaved this time. But, you know, let's all have a little bit of grace. We're all working under the constraints that we have. But we've got so much to talk about. Let's jump right in. So we're talking about credit banking. We've been talking about this every week for the last 14 weeks. Credit banking is a financial strategy that helps us radically eliminate our debt, while at the same time helping us to decrease the number of payments that we have to make on our debt, and that decreases the total amount of interest we have to pay, and thus creates financial freedom, which is what I call the lost American dream. Do any of you think of it like that? Like, oh, financial freedom. That's nice. That sounds like a myth or a legend. I mean, that's what, unfortunately, where a lot of people are at. A lot of people have accepted a lifestyle of indebtedness and for the rest of their life. I mean, when we look at our country is 23, what is it, 23 or more trillion dollars in debt right now. I mean, we just have kind of come to just live with a malaise of that we're always just going to be in debt. And it doesn't have to be that way, because this indebtedness is really an invisible prison or cage that holds us. And so we're going to break free of this, and we're going to find that lost buried treasure, that financial freedom, so that we can do what we were put on this earth to do, what we feel like we were meant to do. Not working because we have to pay our bills, because if we don't pay our bills, then everything falls apart in our lives. No, working and really doing your vocation, what you were called to do, what you feel you were meant to do, what you were put here to do. That's the whole goal. That's what we're trying to do, is help encourage and uplift everybody here, especially during these hard economic times, to show you that there is a way, there is a strategy. So I need to tell you right off the bat that you know, I'm not a licensed attorney, accountant, or financial advisor, broker, or any other licensed individual. I mean, you can read the whole thing. This is really just a disclaimer about you have to do your own due diligence. I'm going to share strategies. I mean, this is a mastermind. We're here to work together. I'm presenting some information, you're considering it, and we're really just chewing it and trying to figure this all out together. And we'll do a case study later today where we'll look at implementing these strategies. But when you go to implement this yourself, we highly recommend that you always seek out competent legal financial professionals when implementing any strategy that has a financial impact to you. Always. Okay? With that said, let's jump right in. Real quick, who am I? I'm Joseph Smith, and you see down below pictured with me is my business partner, Ray Fleming. We started a business called Wise Guys and Ties, which is a business that is committed to helping people achieve their God-given purpose in life. We do that through helping people learn about the importance of starting a business, and then giving people the tools to make that business thrive and succeed, especially in hard economic times. So tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about business, but we're primarily still focusing on business credit, and we really want to bring home a lot of these ideas and these concepts so that you can really take these and move forward with your life. So if you don't have a business, if you've never started one, you never thought I'd ever go into business, today we're going to kind of challenge that paradigm for you, because everyone should be in business, at least in the business of providing for your own financial security. At the very least, there's a lot of different business models out there. We're not going to really dive too much into that today, but that is something that we do work with a lot of people, and we want to encourage everybody to consider starting a business as a great and excellent strategy to help you eliminate your debt and produce wealth for your life. All right. So, what is the lost American dream? What is it? We've already talked about it, right? I've already said it's financial freedom. I mean, think about, like, I love the Indiana Jones movies. I'm a big fan. But you know how he's going through the temple and he's searching for that golden idol. I mean, that's what we are. We are all searching for something that was lost, because one day you didn't go to school and learn that, oh, I want to work at a job for the rest of my life to pay for all these bills and never get ahead, and slip further and further into debt, and one day die and pass my debt on to my kids. And that's not what we thought out. We thought about one day, maybe some of us aren't thinking, oh, I want to be the richest person in the world, but we are thinking, I at least want to generate enough wealth that I can pay for my needs, I can take care of myself. I'm not a burden on society, I'm not a burden on my family, but I can just take care of myself. And maybe I'm even in a position to help others. We want to have that freedom. We don't want to feel like we work because if we don't work, we can't pay the bills, and then someone's going to send us to collections, and then we're going to get our wages garnished. We don't want to feel the weight of those chains or those whips on our back, right? We want freedom. I mean, it is everybody's desire to breathe free from tyranny, free from oppression. But tyranny and oppression can sometimes feel like it's that monthly credit card bill or the loan payment that's coming due, right? It's just so oppressive. You're like, how are we going to pay that? It can feel that way. So what we want to do is find the lost American dream. And that's different for each and every one of you. But at the core, we know that financial freedom is at the core of what will help you achieve that lost American dream. So, what is financial freedom? Well, it's important to go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and shut my picture down so you can see the whole screen here. Financial freedom happens when your passive income equals your monthly expenses. I mean, we need to clearly define what we're talking about here. So that means that if I can get my technology. Okay, so let's quantify this. You take your monthly expenses and you subtract your passive income. Passive income is just income that's coming in that you aren't actively working for. You're not going to a 9-to-5 job. You're not punching a clock. You're just, this money comes into you. When your passive income equals your monthly expenses, you have reached your financial freedom goal. So let's do an example. What if your monthly expenses were $3,000? And right now, let's say you have zero passive income. Then that means your financial freedom goal for you to be financially free is for $3,000 to come in every month without you having to actively work for it. So how much money do you need to invest to create the passive income needed to reach your financial freedom goal? Well, I mean, people have all kinds of different goals. Oh, I want to be a millionaire. Oh, I'd love to have $100,000 coming in a year. I want $10,000 a month. Whatever that goal is, I mean, how do we know what we're shooting for? I mean, we could throw out numbers, pie in the sky numbers, but how do we know? How do we get there? When we're talking about investing, we're like, what? And we invest in all kinds of things. Your budget is an investment. What do you invest in? Do you invest in making your mortgage payments or your rent payments? Are you investing in car payments, student loan debt? Are you investing in your life? Like, do you invest in Netflix? Do you invest in eating out? Any way that we're spending our money is an investment. Now, most of the times what we do is we get caught up in consumerism. And so we spend our money and get zero return on our investment. I mean, we might get a little benefit here now today, like my belly is full, but tomorrow I'm going to be hungry again. What an investment is, obviously, what we're looking for is to take our money and learn how we spend it in such ways that it begins to come back to us, that we put our money out there, we pay our bills in such a way that we get a return coming back to us. That's at the core of the credit banking strategy, where we learn how to convert our cash that we earn into available credit. That way we leverage other people's money to pay our bills, but yet we still have the buying power of our lines of credit. So this helps us to continue to have liquidity and having cash flow. When cash flow is when our income exceeds our monthly expenses. So how much money do you need to invest to reach a financial freedom goal? Well, we've quantified that as well. Your financial freedom goal, you should take what that number is, multiply it by 12, because there's 12 months in a year, and then we're going to divide by whatever rate of return that we're getting. So the higher the rate of return that you're looking for, usually the riskier the investment. And then the lower the rate of return that you're looking at, the safer the investment. So people say that stocks and bonds are pretty, not stocks, but bonds are pretty safe. So, and they have a pretty low ROI. But people can invest in stocks and futures, and there can be high rates of return on those, but it's riskier because it's all paper. And we've seen the volatility of the stock market. It's been great, but we've lost a lot of gains, and it'll come back. I mean, this is very similar, and we've seen that happen with all kinds of assets and commodities that are out there. I personally invest in real estate. I like real estate because it gives me the most control over any type of asset that's out there. Now, I don't have total control. I mean, the market forces are outside of my control. What's happening right now in our country with everything, with the coronavirus shutdown, well, that's outside my control, and that affects my real estate. But these are the things that by investing in real estate, I still have something tangible. If everything were to lose value, I still have a place to live. That's food, shelter. These are basic needs that we have. So I definitely prefer that over, say, a precious metal or a piece of paper like a stock. But I mean, if you really understand day trading, currency trading, those type of investments, then invest with what you know. If you're educated and you know what you're doing, then do it, and you can make good money at it. But you have to choose your rate of return. So let's take a look at that. So here's an example. Let's say $3,000 is our monthly expenses. So we multiply that by 12, and let's say we're going to go for a 10% return on investment. That's a little risky. So let's say that means maybe we're looking at, in terms of real estate, maybe I'm looking at doing some fix and flips, buying a property at a low price, maybe at auction, and then fixing it up and then selling it at full price. So getting that 10% rate of return would mean that I would need to have invested $360,000, earning me 10% to be able to pay for for that to be my passive income. So when we start to quantify these numbers, whatever they might be for you, and you can play around with this formula to figure out what you're comfortable with, then you start to realize, oh, well, you know what? Because what is your retirement goal? What are you trying to build up in your 401k or your IRA, or what? I mean, sometimes we don't know. We just hope to have as much money as possible, but how much do you actually need? Well, figure out your monthly expenses, multiply it by 12, and then figure out what rate of return you're comfortable with. Usually if you're younger, then you can take more risk. If you're a little bit older and you feel like there's fewer days ahead than there are behind, then you might want to have a more conservative, a lower return that's more reasonable. And then you start looking at, well, how much money do I actually need? And when you have that invested in, and again, when I say invested, I want you to invest in things that you're learning about. You need to be educated, right? That's a huge part of everything. You're here tonight getting educated, of course, but you need to continue this education on your own. You need to continuously add to your pool of knowledge about investments and how to grow your wealth. Again, if real estate is I mean, everybody should have some real estate in their portfolio. Happen to uh, love real estate, but again, I know that there are other ways to make money out there, and if you're educated in that and know how to do it, then go for it. But again, let's quantify, what is it that we actually need? We're trying to achieve financial freedom. So in this example, if $3,000 a month is your monthly expenses and you have $360,000 maybe in a retirement account and you have it invested and you're making an annual rate of return of 10%, then you have actually achieved your financial freedom. And then anything that you make above that becomes, gravy. I mean, that's wealth building at that point. So what keeps us from financial freedom? I mean, why aren't we all experiencing financial freedom today? Well, it's because of out of control debt. Again, I go back to the Indiana Jones movie. I mean, all those natives chasing after him. That's what it sometimes feels like when the credit card company, the banks, everybody's after you and they want your money. And you know that feeling that, oh, payday's right around the corner, but the whole paycheck's been spent and everybody wants their money. I mean, your friendly neighborhood bank, if you miss a few payments on that car, that friendly neighborhood bank and comes and repossesses that vehicle. So sometimes that's what it can feel like when when the bills are piling up and there doesn't seem to be enough money to pay all of it. These lenders, they're headhunters. They're coming after you. It feels like all of a sudden you're getting legal notices, foreclosure notices, judgments, liens. Oh man, it just, and it can spiral out of control. I mean, everything could be going along, hunky dory, and then all of a sudden, the government shuts everything down, and then all of a sudden, now what am I going to do? I mean, some of us are just one bad, like say our car breaks down, a major car repair. We're one major car repair from going bankrupt, or if there is a major health concern, all of a sudden we've got to put all our money and time into that. And so a lot of times we're not broke yet, we're not bankrupt, but it feels like if one thing, we're living in a house of cards. One thing goes wrong, it could all fall down on us. So what are we going to do about that? Well, let's think about when our debt is out of control. It's usually because we don't have enough income to service that debt. You might have heard of a term called debt to income. Debt to income ratio is a factor that lenders look at before they will lend you money. I mean, so let's say you wanted to buy a house, maybe even a rental property. Maybe you're going to turn it into a nightly rental, or you just want to supplement your income. And so you're just trying to leverage your own personal credit to borrow $200,000 to buy a house that you can rent out. Well, what's the bank going to look at? Well, they're going to look at several things, right? They're going to look at, is your credit score greater than 700? They're going to look at your credit utilization. We're going to talk more about that in a bit, but they want to see that it's under 30%, your total credit utilization under 30%. And then they're going to look at something called your debt to income ratio. And they're going to want to, on average, see that it's below 45%. But what's that mean? That means that 45% of your income services your debt, or less. That means that you have more available income, so they feel that you can go ahead and afford this loan. So the bank runs their numbers to see that you can afford it. So here, let me, I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off again. But let's look at this as a monthly income statement. Let's say the salary that's coming in monthly, $6,600. And we have taxes that are paid. This usually comes out of the paycheck before we see it. So this is gross salary, then the taxes, and then you have your mortgage payment. Then let's say you're paying on a school loan and you've got a car payment, and you got some credit card payments, and then there's maybe a retail, like you're paying on a bill. Some people get like a water system and they have to make monthly payments on that. So then we have, and then your lifestyle. I put lifestyle expenses here. What's your food bill, your water bill, those type of things? What's your gas for your car? Then you got your total expenses. So we're looking at this as a monthly income statement. So let's look at, how does the bank actually calculate your debt to income ratio? Well, the lender looks at your fixed expenses and they divide it by your gross income. This is how the lender or the bank calculates your DTI. So your fixed payments, right? Your mortgage payment doesn't change, your school loan, the car payments, they don't change. And they base it off of your gross income. Now, taxes, they change based off of how much you earn. Your credit card payment can go up or down depending on what your average daily balance is. So, and your lifestyle expenses, they can go up and down as well. You can have some months where the power bill is more and other months where it's less. So they just focus on taking a look at the fixed expenses and they divide it by the gross income. And so when they do that, you know, we added up, I did the math here for you. It's 1,600 divided by 6,600, and you come up with a number of 24%. And so the lender looks at everything, and if your credit score is above 700 and your utilization is below 30%, then congratulations, the bank says, you qualified for the loan. But do you really qualify for this loan? Let's take a look. I mean, so that's the lender's generic qualification for DTI. But what is a real DTI, a living DTI? I mean, because we don't live off of our gross expenses, and our fixed expenses aren't our only expenses. So a living DTI is when you take your fixed expenses and you add in all the other expenses so that we come up with what your total expenses are. And since we don't live off of our gross income, we need to subtract out those taxes so that we get our net income. So let's take our total expenses and divide it by our net income and see what do we get. Well, when we add all those numbers up, then we see that our DTI in this example is at 68%. 68% of our income is servicing our debt right now. Now, if the bank were to qualify us on the loan based off of how we actually live, we would not meet this for less than 45% criteria. But here, the bank qualified us based off of our fixed expenses divided by our gross income. Well, that's weird. I mean, why did the bank qualify us when in reality, we actually would not qualify because we are over leveraged right now at this point with all of our expenses? Isn't that interesting? And you know, one of the things we haven't even taken into consideration is that if we do qualify for this loan and we do get approved, then there's going to be a monthly payment on that loan. So let's throw that in as well. So now, if we got approved, we're going to throw in an extra $1,200 into our total expenses. And when we divide that by our net income, now you can see that our debt to income ratio, our actual living debt to income ratio, becomes 96%. So 96% of our income is gone just servicing our debt. And so some people might argue, well, I mean, but you're getting a rental property, so somebody's going to live in there, so they're going to make that payment for you. Yes, they will, but what happens when they don't? I mean, if you're being conservative and just say wanting to get a rental property, you need to account for the fact that 20% of the year you might have to pay for that rent because your property might be vacant while you're getting a new tenant put in there. And so when we start looking at debt to income ratio, just trying to, in this case, qualify for a rental property that we thought was going to supplement our income and help us grow that passive income so that we could achieve our financial freedom goal, all of a sudden we realized that, wait a minute, we can't afford this. 96% of my income, one thing goes wrong and I lose it all. Not only do I lose the rental property, but I could lose my own house and my car, and I could lose, everything could fall apart. But a lot of people don't understand this. And so a lot of people have ended up in all kinds of over leveraged situations. And it might not have been maybe this house. Maybe somebody got an expensive car that they were going to use for their job or for their work, and they qualified, but then they really didn't look at what their living debt to income ratio was, and so the bank qualifies you, but you're really not qualified. And so when people end up in so many financially difficult situations where now everything's falling apart, I mean, if you're like me, because I've been through this, folks. I mean, years ago, I went through two foreclosures, okay, and a bankruptcy. Well, it led to a bankruptcy because I couldn't keep the finances going. And I felt like a failure. I felt like, well, how did this happen? I thought I was on top of everything. And it wasn't until when I started to learn about how the bank does things that I realized, wait a minute, why did the bank qualify me for this loan based off of the fixed expenses divided by the gross income? That's not realistic. And then I realized that, wait a minute, I looked to the banks as the sage advice of wisdom, my Sherpa leading me up to the top of my financial goal, right? The peak of my financial goal. And then I realized, you know what? They're not necessarily looking out for my best interest. They're looking out for their bottom line and their investors. And by telling me that I qualified for this loan, made me go for the loan. If I really looked at the numbers, I would have seen, wait a minute, I can't qualify for this. This is too much. I'm over leveraged. And when you think about what do people who are married, what do they fight over the most? They're fighting over finances. And here you are, you're just trying to do something you think is right. Hey, let's get a rental property. Let's bring in some extra income. This is all going to work. And then it begins to fall apart, or you make some other major purchase. Let's go back to school. Let's get this education, and then we can increase our, but then when you realize the student loans are more expensive than the income that you get at the job. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can look at this scenario, but when they qualify you for a loan like a home loan, an auto loan, a student loan, or any personal loan, right? They're going to take a look at your debt to income ratio. And the bank's going to say, oh, hey, look, you qualify. But again, do you really? You need to become your own financial expert and not put your faith and trust in the bank here, because the bank wants to make those loans because they make a lot of money on loans, as we've seen. So if you, looking at the numbers here, can see that, wait a minute, all of this financial hardship, all of the fights and my having to work 2 jobs or overtime, and then I'm missing out on my kid's life, all of that could have been solved if I had known how to really calculate my DTI. And then you start realizing, wait a minute, this wasn't my fault. This financial circumstances, I mean, it's my fault. I mean, I bear the responsibility, but wait a minute, I see now that the banks position themselves as the financial experts, and I trusted that when I should have become my own financial expert. And then I start seeing, and I see this happen in so many other people's lives. As my business partner, Ray Fleming, and I, we work with a lot of people, and we see the hurt and the suffering that they go through. And they just didn't realize that, I mean, we grew up and we were told, hey, I got some extra money, or what am I going? Well, go to the bank, ask them, see what they should say. They'll tell you what to invest in. You've got to become educated. You've got to learn. And this is stuff that they don't teach in school. And so when you go to the bank to qualify for a loan and you qualify, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea for you to go and get that loan. That's why if we can get educated and we can run our own numbers and be our own financial expert, we can make better financial choices and see, this loan is not a good loan for us at this time. So we can use the credit banking strategy to eliminate more of our debt. And then if we can lower that debt to income ratio, the true actual living debt to income ratio, then we can maybe afford to get into certain types of loans or investments and afford those without them And because, I mean, if 96% of your income goes to paying your debts, I mean, you're literally living paycheck to paycheck, and everything is spent before you've got it. There's almost nothing left over. And that's a bad place to be in. And many of you might be experiencing that and didn't realize that house or the car or the student loan that you got, you couldn't afford it. But the bank told you you could, so you went ahead. And that is why we want to enlighten you. We want you to see that you can make better financial decisions when you are your own financial advisor and you run your own numbers. Let's talk about credit score. That was on the previous slide. The credit score is such a, we sometimes worship at the altar of the FICO score. If I have a high credit score, I must be a good person. But if my credit score is in the low 500s or 400s, then I'm a terrible person. And that's not true. The credit score is not that way, but we're made to feel that way. And banks, corporations, governments, everything seems to revolve around our credit score. And that's am I worthy? And let's take a look at a couple of things and understand how the credit score works, okay? Because once you understand, once the curtain is rolled back and you can see what's actually happening, you can make choices that you can actively cause your credit score to go up. So here we are swinging, trying to avoid the creditors, and so we check our credit score all the time. This is what you see. I mean, how many of you have gone to Credit Karma or Credit Sesame, right? Or credit.com, or maybe you've gone to check your Experian or your Equifax credit score. I mean, we do that. So we check our credit scores, we monitor, there's credit monitoring services out there. But take a look at something here. Notice the ranges, they're all different. Equifax goes from 280 to 850. Experian goes from 330 up to 830. The national equivalency score, which is Credit Sesame and credit.com, they use a scale from 360 to 840. And then the trans risk score, if a lot of people use Credit Karma, that ranges from 300 to 850. So this is when you're checking your score, this is what you see as your credit score, and this is what you perceive to be whether or not you can qualify for some type of financing, auto vehicle financing, mortgage financing. You might have discovered that there seems to be some discrepancy between the credit score that you seem to use and look and what the lender looks up, because take a look at this. So here you are trying to just get a loan, and the natives are throwing their spears, they're chucking them at you. But you know what? The credit scores that you were looking at are not necessarily the same credit scores that the lender was looking at. See, they're looking at your credit optics score, they're looking at a lender application score, experience score, the X plus score, the Vantage credit score. And look at these ranges. Some of these have totally different scales, 1 to 999, 100 to 990, 300 to 900, 300 to 850. So when you say you're checking your credit score and it's a 700, well, what does that mean? Is it 700 on the FICO 7, the FICO 8, the FICO 9 model? Are we talking about the Vantage model? See, lenders, when they look at your credit score and they're running it, the different credit scores that they choose to look at are industry specific. So mortgage lenders are looking at very specific credit score ranges. Auto vehicle financing looks at a completely different set of standards, and same with student loans. So when you check your credit score, you might find that I think I have a great credit score, but then you don't get approved. You're like, wait a minute, I don't understand that. I have this great credit score, and then somebody checks your credit score and they come back and they tell you you've got some lower score, or maybe they even check your credit score and it looks like, oh wow, that looks higher, but you still don't qualify, or you do qualify, but you get really lousy terms. So a high interest rate and a high payment. And so it's because there's a discrepancy in the scoring models, folks. What you check for your credit scores and what the lender checks, these are different models. Let's take a look. These are probably the two most popular models out there. Most folks out there are checking, when they're looking at their credit score, their FICO 8, which you see on the right here. And a lot of lenders in different situations check the Vantage 3.0 model. So look at, there's slight differences here. As you can see, the we list out what each of these fields are. So in a FICO 8 credit scoring model, there's really 5 areas: your payment history, your credit utilization, your age of accounts, your mix of accounts, and your inquiries. And if you don't know what those mean, just real quickly, your payment history is just what that means: your history of making on-time payments, and that's collected. Every time you make a payment on time, there's a record of it. Anytime you miss a payment or are late, sometimes you get a 30-day grace period and then you can make that up and you're fine. But if you actually have gone more than 30 days late, then it shows up late, and so that's a ding against your score. And look, 35% of your score is just your payment history. So obviously missing one payment can affect your score by as much as 35%. Now take a look at the next largest arc here, this orange one. 30% of your credit score in the FICO 8 model is based off of what? Your utilization. So what's that mean? If your credit limit is $1,000, you have a $1,000 limit, how much of that limit are you using? Are you using $500? That would be 50% utilization. Do you have $900 on the card? You're at 90% utilization. So the way this model works is that if you are under 30% utilization, you are actually building, your score is growing and increasing. And as you keep utilizing more and more of your credit line, your score the increase in your score slows the closer you get to 50% utilization. Once you're at 50% utilization or more, now your credit score doesn't grow. And once you go over 50% utilization, it now begins to negatively impact you by as much as 30%. You can see a 30% decrease in your credit score just by having your card maxed out or nearly maxed out. Now, your age of accounts. This is really important. Do not close old accounts, even if they've had some troubles in the past. Excuse me. The longer your accounts are open, the more history that is available. This is 15% of your score. And a lot of people, they make the mistake of closing old accounts. Oh, I'm not using that card anymore, we'll just close it. And then all of a sudden your credit score drops by 15%. And if that can be the difference between qualifying for a loan or a credit card or not qualifying. And then there's 10% is your mix of accounts. What's that mean? Well, there's a certain formula that lenders like to see. They want to see that you are utilizing a certain variety of different lending products. Do you have a home mortgage? That's one product they want to see that you have. Do you have an auto loan? Well, they'd like to see that as well. Do you have a credit card, right? So the perfect mix of accounts would be having, to get that full 10%, would be having a home mortgage, an auto loan, and 3 credit cards, right? That's the perfect mix, but everybody's different. And so 10% of your score is just having a mix of accounts. But there's a lot of people who just, I don't believe in loans or credit at all. And so they have no loans, they have no credit cards, they have none of that. So their credit score, they might still generate a credit score because they have paid some bills in the past. Their credit score is actually going to be lower than it could be if they actually had a good mix of accounts. Now, also, if you look at the last is inquiries. So how many times does your credit get checked? How many times are you trying to open new accounts? Well, that's 10% of your score right there. So if you have more than 4 inquiries in the last in the last 6 months, then you're going to begin to see that have a negative impact. A negative impact means, let's just say, I think the bottom line is you don't want to have 8 inquiries or more within a 6 to 12 month period of time. But if you can keep that under 4, then you're usually going to meet that full 10% criteria and get full points for that. So when you look at your FICO score, that credit score that you have, you can see that a lot of it has to deal with your payment history and your utilization. You can see 65% of your score is just making payments on time and keeping those credit card balances low. If you can do that, you could, let's say right now today, you're making your payments on time, but your credit cards are maxed out. You start using a credit banking strategy, you could easily see a 30% bump in your credit score as we're bringing that utilization down. Now look at the Vantage score model. I mean, just looking, there's slight differences because there's 6 criteria over here versus 5. They've added available credit. So they're going to take into account how much actual available credit do you have. I mean, if you have a whole bunch of little credit cards with $500 limits, then that's going to be something that they would actually look at as not being favorable. But if you have a $10,000 limit credit card or a $15,000 or $20,000, $25,000 credit card, that's going to give you an extra 7% bump because you have so much more available credit. But you can see that they still weight payment history and utilization just as important as the FICO 8 model. They still put the same amount of interest onto, well, I mean, okay, so they have different names, but really they're still the same type of thing. So when they say depth of credit or mix of accounts, it's the same thing. When we're looking at your credit balances versus your age of accounts, again, your age of accounts, all of these are very similar, but they're slightly tweaked. And so the Vantage scoring model, without getting too technical, does have a few more criteria and some stipulations as it looks at in some of these different fields. And so here's something to consider. The difference between these two scoring models could be up to 60 points. So imagine you're looking at your FICO 8 credit score model and it says you've got a 720 and you're like, yes, I'm going to go apply for that loan. But somebody using the Vantage scoring model, scoring with a slightly different set of criteria, they might see your credit score as a 660, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought my credit score was more than that. And so this is where you begin to see that so many different scoring models out there, and you check one scoring model and the lender checks another. Now you can start to see where this credit score is a little bit more complicated than I thought, and I didn't understand why sometimes I qualify, sometimes I don't. So again, when we start looking at these this is the financial world that we're in. This is the terrain, right? We're trying to find our way through this field, and there's debt to income ratio, there's your credit score, there's so many different things to consider. And now, and so when we better understand how these work, we can make better choices. But when we don't, and we just sort of wing it, we can easily make mistakes that can cost us. So how long does it take to build your credit score? I mean, how quickly can you get that to bounce back up? Well, I want you to know that the way the system is designed to get a good credit score takes time. There's no quick, easy formula to jump from if you have a 600 credit score today to get all the way up to an 850 tomorrow. It's designed to be slow and methodical, and the system really doesn't allow for a lot of forgiveness if you make a mistake. I mean, one mistake can have a huge swing. 35% of your score could be affected by a single mistake. So it's very difficult to bounce back. If you're trying to build your credit score organically, you got to be patient. You've got to take the time to build your payment history, and you got to keep that utilization down and just continue to make good credit management decisions. But for some of us, we have made mistakes. So how do we fix that? How do we repair our credit? What is credit repair? Credit repair is the act of systematically disputing errors, inaccuracies, and unverified information that appears on your credit accounts for the purpose of having them deleted. A lot of times our credit score can be messed up because somebody else's information's there, or old information should have dropped off a long time ago, but it's still reporting. And so a lot of people, even people on this YouTube channel, have used credit repair. I've used credit repair in the past before, and it's a great strategy to remove those negatives off of your credit score so that you can build your credit score faster. This does have the effect of boosting that credit score quickly once those items are deleted. But credit repair can take a while too. If anybody's ever used it, it involves a process of starting a letter writing campaign to your credit issuers and the credit the consumer reporting bureaus. And these letter writing campaigns can take 6, 12, 18 months, 24 months. You could be 2 years working, trying to get stuff deleted off your credit score before it finally drops off. So there is a lot of time that goes into trying to repair your credit, which is one of the reasons why we try to talk so much to people about actually doing a credit banking strategy, because credit banking strategy, when implemented correctly, helps you boost your payment history and lower your utilization. That's 65% of your credit score. Just by using a credit banking strategy, you can begin to actively or proactively repair your credit, at least 65% of your credit anyway. And this is something that can happen in a relatively short period of time. You can start establishing a really good payment track record and history and really bring that utilization down in as little as 6 months. So, but again, we want to always talk about and look at what is it that people are doing and where are they getting stuck. A lot of people we talk to are stuck on credit repair. Oh, I'd like to do this, but I'm still working on credit repair. Good, keep working on credit repair. Implementing a credit banking strategy and doing credit repair at the same time are a good thing, right? You don't have to do one and then wait for the other. We can multitask. We can walk and chew gum and credit repair and do credit banking at the same time. So when we're talking about the credit banking strategy, as you can see, this is what we've covered over the last 3 weeks. We've talked about budget, we've talked about lines versus loans, and we've talked about implementing the actual credit banking strategy. This is all the pieces of the map that we put together to find the financial freedom. And this is what was lost. So with our budget, the main thing that we were trying to learn from there is how to increase our income and how to decrease our expenses by finding duplications and thus increase our cash flow. And looking at lines versus loans, we start understanding how the amortization of the interest on a line of credit or a credit card and a loan is calculated differently. So loans are very expensive early on for the first half of the loan, very expensive. And lines of credit are more simple APRs. And so we can see that just the way that the debt is calculated, and the fact that people refinance their loans all the time puts people in a very bad financial situation where they're constantly stuck and can never get out. And then the last part we cover there is the credit banking strategy, where what we begin to notice is that when we start pushing our income through our lines of credit and we start making all of our expenses through our line, and all put that on our line of credit, we begin to use our lines of credit or our credit cards as our actual checking account. And so our credit cards become our new checking account. So that's where our savings is and our available credit, and that's where we make our payments. And this is very important because this is where we begin to understand the power of leverage. And when we start using other people's money to pay our bills and we start converting our cash into available credit, we have more liquidity, cash flow, and that allows us to chunk down our debts, the payments on those debts, decreasing the total number of payments and decreasing the total amount of interest that's paid. So, but again, some people will argue, well, I could just make extra payments. I just save up the money and then just make these extra chunk payments. And you can do that. But the difference between that and a credit banking strategy is when you use your own money to pay your debt, that money's gone. You've lost 100% of the buying power of that money. When you utilize a line of credit, you're utilizing somebody else's money to pay down that debt. You're paying the annual percentage rate to borrow somebody else's money to pay down your debts. You're converting your cash into available credit. Available credit, what can you buy with a credit card these days? I ask that question a lot. You can buy a lot of things. Some people say, well, I can't pay my mortgage, I can't pay my car payment. Well, Yeah, you can. You just have to know how to do it using a third-party processor. Uh, some people, you see, credit banking by itself is a wonderful tool, a strategy for eliminating debt. But when you combine it with infinity banking, when you combine it with uh, uh, business credit, when you combine it with other financial strategies, you begin to experience a lot of a lot of a synergy. There's ways where a lot of these strategies can start all coming together. So if you're watching other YouTube videos and you're learning about all these other great strategies, when you learn how these strategies work and you combine them, you can do so much more. Which is why we're talking about now the combining business credit with credit banking strategy. Some of you have seen me talk about this before, but for those who haven't, because we're always getting new people coming on every week, every day, and you're welcome. And you know, we want to say hi to our YouTube folks out there, and it's so great to see so many of you folks that are in the that are here on the webinar. You know, I want to say, you know, shout out to Camille, to Damon, to Eric, Leon, Meredith, SP, Tina. You know, I'm so grateful to have so many, Ray, thanks for being there. We have so many great folks that are on our webinar, but out there in YouTube land, we want to welcome all of you as well. So business credit with credit banking. What's going on here? Well, let's talk about why we would do this. Usually what we try to talk about here is a person named Max. Max, he's called Max because he's maxed out. He's seen the videos, he's seen the training, he understands the concept. Credit banking, you know, it goes by a lot of names. Credit banking, velocity banking, it goes by the name of cash flow banking, mortgage sweep strategies. Those are just a few different names. There's slight nuances between those strategies, but at the core, it's still the same strategy. That was really, it comes from Australia is where it comes from. If you're doing your history of it, using simple lines of interest to pay off amortized loan debt. So the just using the two different ways that the interest is amortized in two different products to pay one off faster than the other. So Max here, he's a smart guy or gal. And so knowing that this strategy works, but looking at Max's situation, he owns a house, but he's been maxed out for 2 years, right? Just one thing after another. It just seems like hard times, life, the challenges, they just seem to always have come up. And so now, so here's what credit banking strategies teach is you take your income. So Max brings in $5,000 net income after taxes, but Max has $3,000 of monthly expenses, which leaves him about $2,000 of cash flow. So Max has on his credit cards or his lines of credit $15,000 limit. And let's, for the sake of argument, say that's spread over three credit cards, each with a $5,000 limit, but each $5,000 limit credit card is carrying a $4,000 balance. So he's at 80% utilization overall. Now, the total amount of interest that he's paying is 21%. So Max is like, okay, I'm not getting anywhere fast. I'm making minimum payments. Nothing is going away. I have to keep using my lines of credit, so I'm not getting ahead. So here, what does Max do? Well, Max can't do much because look, because he's been maxed out for so long, his credit score has gone down. His credit score has gone down. Why? Because as we were talking about when we were looking at the breakdown of your credit score, his utilization is at 80%. So his credit score, he's seen a 35% reduction in his credit score because of his utilization. And because he's maxed out because of all of his debt. So his debt is really high and his income is going to service that debt. So his debt to income ratio is fairly high. So he can't qualify for a new loan. And then we talked about that utilization. I mean, the utilization really is through the roof at 80%. Remember, we need to keep it under 50%. And for it to grow and to help grow our credit score, we need to get that under 30%. So this is his situation, and in this scenario that we're talking about here, it's been going on for a couple of years. For you, if it's been going on for more than 6 months, you could experience the same thing. It doesn't take long for you to get maxed out, and so here's what happens. Let's take one of these credit cards. Max is putting all of his money through his credit cards. He wants to use a credit banking strategy, so he's going to put all of his income into his line of credit to pay off those balances and then utilize the available credit. But when you've been maxed out for more than 6 months, and in this case for 24 months, here's what happens when Max does that. He puts his money and it pays off that $4,000 like that. But notice what happened is the bank immediately dropped his credit limit. Well, now Max is feeling like this doesn't work. I was going to use the available limit to pay some bills, but now they dropped my limit. So I paid off $4,000 that I legitimately owed, but now my credit limit's only $1,000. And so from the lender's perspective, they feel like, look, you don't know how to use credit cards the right way. You've maxed out. You need to prove to us that you can utilize this line of credit and grow it by keeping your utilization under 50%. And so Max is feeling stressed out. He thought credit banking was going to be the solution. He went and tried it, and then all of a sudden all of his limits were dropped on him, and now he's really starting to pull his hair out, because what's he going to do? Now he feels like he's lost money. And so this is where if you're watching something on YouTube and you're just checking it out or trying it out for the first time, you're gonna think, well, wait a minute, this doesn't work. This is crazy. You're thinking to yourself, what am I going to do? So business credit is really going to be the solution here. And so this is where we begin to combine the strategies. So let's talk about business. So I'm gonna real quick, I'm gonna close my camera off because I'm going to use this side of the board. But starting a business, this is very important. So businesses have their own challenges. For a business to qualify for credit, to get money, to be successful, to get loans, they need cash flow, they need credit, they need collateral. And so this is something that if you're just starting a business, your business has no cash flow, credit, or collateral. So all right, so what are we to do? Well, we want Max to start his business. We really do, and we need Max to so what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a synergy between the two here. And to do that, Max has reached the limit of what he can do on the personal side. And for, a lot of people, how this happened to Max? He actually tried to start a business, but the way he did it was he leveraged his personal credit to do that. And so now he's maxed out. And a lot of this debt was from trying to start a business, right? To fund the business. I mean, we see that happen with a lot of our clients. But what are we going to do? How do we get the best of both worlds? Well, with Max, his credit is based off of his social security number. And I mean, and you know that your credit, you fill out any credit application, you got to put your social security number down. With your business, though, your business doesn't have a social security number. It has an EIN number. That's its tax identifier. Now, with a business, you can use your business's EIN number, and within 6 to 12 months, you could build $50,000 in business lines of credit, trade lines, revolving store credit, fuel credit, fleet credit, auto vehicle financing, high limit cash credit cards. You get to have a whole mix of that. Within 6 to 12 months, this happens really, really quickly. And so a business can qualify for a lot of credit. And this is without having to use a personal guarantee, right? So let's say I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this, but let's say of the $50,000 in lines of credit that Max's business has, because he built his business credit, let's say he takes $25,000 in what's called a corporate credit card, and he decides to give himself a loan, or he extends a line of credit. There's two ways to do this. So he can't qualify for a HELOC and utilize a HELOC strategy because he doesn't qualify. His debt to income ratio, the bank won't qualify him. His credit score is too low. His utilization, the bank just won't qualify him based off of those criteria. But his business could extend to him a business home equity line of credit, a HELOC, right? Or a HELO, a home equity loan, right? And so what do you do? How do you do this? Again, there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. This is an advanced strategy. You really have to make sure you make every effort to be transparent with everything that you're doing. So if you're going to extend a HELOC to your on your property, there has to be some equity there. So at least if you're using $25,000, there's $25,000 of equity, and that can be based off of a BPO. A BPO is called a broker's price opinion, or appraisal. But usually, if you're just doing this yourself, you're going to do something simple with a realtor or a broker. But so you figure out what the value of the house is and what you owe on it and how much equity is in there. I mean, Max could have a lot of equity in his home, but because the credit score and the DTI and the utilization are too high, the bank won't give him any money. So it doesn't matter how much equity he has, because of the way his current finances are, he can't qualify for money, even though he might legitimately have enough equity in there to do something. But his business can. So how would you do that? Well, you would secure. So again, we have to do this the right way. So you see the PMN, that's a private mortgage note. Let's say when you borrow, when your business, that $25,000 in corporate credit cards, most of the time these cards come at 0% interest for anywhere from 18 to 24 months. And so what can be done is then this money can be lent, and so the business isn't paying any interest on it. So you and your private mortgage note can charge interest, and this interest is the income that actually goes to the company. But you set up a private mortgage note, let's say for 2 years, because you have 0% interest on the line of credit for 24 months, and you're going to put this in a second lien position. The first lien position is held by whoever the lender is, the bank. They're not going to care about a junior lien position, so it's not going to threaten your current mortgage or anything. But this is where you would go to a title company. You don't have to. You could go down to the county and record it yourself. But sometimes you might want to use a title company because it just makes it easier. And so you have to, and you can set up a note. So if you made a loan from your business to yourself personally, and you decide to service that loan and those payments through the title company, you now have a third party between you and your business that's legitimizing this payment, and they're keeping accurate records for you so that you can, if you ever got audited, you're able to show this to the IRS. But it's very important that this be done the right way. Like for me and my business, when we utilize this strategy, I have a bookkeeper, accountant, I have a CPA, and so we keep very meticulous records on everything when we do this. If you don't know what you're doing and you sort of just wing it through this, you could make a mistake. And keep in mind that when you're dealing with finances like this, you don't want to make a mistake where you fail to accurately record your income correctly, because then this loan that you're making to yourself could be viewed as income, and now it's taxable, right? You could have a situation where the corporate veil gets pierced, and somebody can then not only go after your business, but then come after your house. So you need to make sure that these, like your private mortgage note, is drafted correctly, that you are filed with the county recorder the right way, which is another reason why I would hire the title company, because then you've got title insurance to make sure that if anything went wrong, right, that insurance would cover you. So I'm bringing this all up because Max, he couldn't do the credit banking strategy. But when he started a business, the business could get access to credit. The business could help. And so now we've set up the scenario where we took $25,000 in corporate line of credit and we've made a loan or extended a line of credit that we're servicing through the title company. And let's say the minimum payment's $500. Well, now Max, instead of making that minimum payment, he can use his credit banking strategy and run all of the income through the payment, through the payment processing of that title company. So how would that work? So he puts all $5,000, even though it only needs to make a $500 payment. The title company has to take out their payment processing, which is, roughly around $50. And then you see what revenue of $4,950 coming into the business. Now, is that all income for the business? No, that's repayment for loans that the business borrowed on its lines of credit. Only the interest being charged on the line of credit is the actual income. And it's very important that if you're, doing your bookkeeping, that you make sure that you're not claiming that as income and that you're not deducting all of the expenses as expenses. So again, this is a doable strategy, but I recommend using professionals when doing it, because this is what I had to do. So now what we have though is we do have revenue coming in, gross revenue of $4,950. That is showing cash flow to the business. Now, for a business to be able to qualify for lending, let's say you're applying for the EIDL or the EIDL, excuse me, or you're applying for the PPP program. They're going to want to look back and they're going to want bank records to show what your revenue was. Now, that revenue, that's a gross revenue, and some of that obviously in this case is going towards debt service. But to see revenue coming in is one of the criterias that you need to qualify for funding from a lending institution. So right off the bat, by just setting up your business, taking a line of credit, extending it to yourself personally, now Max has $25,000 to work with. What can he do with that? Well, he could pay off his credit cards. He could make a huge payment on the house. He could pay off his cars. I mean, there's a lot of different things that Max could do with that. And then by making the payments on the $25,000 through the title company, he's actually now creating a revenue into the business. So now, this is the part where I'm going to turn off my camera. Okay, so in the upper right-hand corner, a lot of the way credit banking strategies work is so we have this $25,000 balance, and so Max putting his $5,000 income onto the line of credit, he then uses this credit card, this corporate credit card. So it's in his business name, but he could get another. So I mean, with a credit card, you can have another card issued in, say, Max's name. So the business has its own card, right? And then Max could get one issued to him personally that he uses. So that helps him with his bookkeeping, track his expenses. So then if Max is not necessarily giving himself a loan in this case, but is extending a line of credit of $25,000, he then puts his personal expenses on this line of credit that he's borrowing from the business. Now, it's important that when you're doing your finances, that the business does not claim these expenses. All right, because this is all just part of the loan repayment. But then each month, Max keeps putting his income down on paying this line of credit. So the business borrowed $25,000 at 0% interest. Max is paying this all down through a credit banking strategy method. What's the net effect that's happening here? Well, after 24 months of doing this, you can actually grow or extend that original $25,000 line of credit or credit cards into as much as or up to $150,000 by simply just making on-time monthly payments. And doing that every 6 months, you can apply for a credit limit increase. And see, with corporate credit cards, they're different than personal credit cards because the only thing that matters is on-time payments. So there are 4 different opportunities over 24 months, or 4 different opportunities for Max to apply for credit limit increases. And it is actually doable and possible that, given the amount of money that is being moved and how well everything's being paid down, that he could qualify all 4 times and see $25,000 in corporate credit cards grow into $150,000 in lines of credit. I mean, that's from just utilize. So if you look at the math on this, $25,000 extended in a line of credit that he's using with $2,000 of cash flow, paying that down, he's going to pay that down in 11 months. He could actually re-extend the $25,000 again to himself and then pay that down in another 11 months. And in doing so, he's used $50,000. And what has he been able to do? Well, I mean, again, eliminate his credit card debt, eliminate auto payments, take a good chunk out of the home mortgage payment. I mean, this is having a great impact on helping Max personally, but what's happening to the business? Well, let's take a look. So what we see here is now the business has built its credit. So we already talked about growing that credit. Now, how did it grow its credit? Because remember, to grow the business's credit, you have to use it every month. You have to, and so every month he's paying it down by 5,000, but he's paying it down more than what he uses it every month. So this is creating a positive payment history, and this is what's growing the credit. So the business is growing its credit. So the business has cash flow. The business is growing its credit, so it has more credit. But now let's look at this. The third thing, a business needs collateral. If you've seen anything recently about applying to the SBA for loans or anything like that, they're always looking for collateral. But your business actually has collateral. It has a private mortgage note that's been filed with the title company and recorded in the county recorder. And so you have a second mortgage or a equitable ownership in a piece of real estate, and that is secured by your private mortgage note. So you actually have collateral. By using your business to help yourself out on the personal side, you've actually also helped your business out, because now your business is more fundable, it's lendable. You have cash flow, you have credit, you have collateral, you can grow this. Now, what happened to Max? What was the net result of everything that happened to Max? Well, his utilization went down, his DTI, debt to income ratio, has gone down, and his credit score has gone up. Oh, notice that Max is smiling now. He's very happy that over the last 2 years, he's seen a huge reduction in all of his debts. Even these personal credit card balances are going back up. Everything is where it looked like nothing could happen. Max was going to lose it all. All Max needed to do was start a business. All Max needed was to have a simple business model of having his business grow business credit, extend a portion of that business credit to him, and leverage the equity that he had in his house that he couldn't leverage himself because his financial situation was so dire. But now that Max's utilization is down, his debt to income ratio is down, his credit score has gone up, he's in a position to do something even way cooler for his business. He now can extend a personal guarantee to his business. So even though we were growing the business, the credit limits up to $100,000, his personal guarantee can add even another $150,000 into that business with personally guaranteed corporate credit cards, which are great because they only report on the business's credit. They don't report on Max's credit. So now Max's business has potentially up to $300,000 in corporate lines of credit. And depending on what he owes on his house, he has some options. He could have his whole business buy the house, and then he could be making payments to his business for the house. He could then he might qualify in this point for a home equity line of credit. He might be able to get, using his business, purchase a duplex or a triplex or another piece of property and leverage his business's credit without having to put himself personally on the hook. And then he can start to grow his wealth. I mean, if you had access to $300,000, it takes money to make money. So there are a lot of business models where if you knew, like, remember when we went back to the beginning, how much money do you need to be able to be financially free? Well, we were calculating if you're in Max's situation, he has $3,000 of expenses. He needs to invest $360,000 at 10% return to become financially free. We already have $300,000 of that right here, potentially on the business side. And maybe we're growing the personal credit and that makes up the other 60,000. Or we just give it enough time and we grow those lines of credit ourselves. But Max is really close to becoming financially free because he utilized two different strategies. Credit banking combined with business credit accelerated his financial freedom. It created a more profitable business and it helped his personal situation. I just wanted to show this to you folks. Again, this is what it looks like when you're doing the accounting on a line of credit that you extend to yourself. You've got to keep excellent, excellent. You got to have QuickBooks, you got to have a bookkeeper, an accountant, and you got to make sure that everything is being reported correctly. So, oh, my favorite time. We've reached case study. So, folks, I hope you're getting a lot out of this. This is so much fun. But this is the part where now we transition to interactive. I've been doing all this talking and I've been showing you stuff about debt to income ratios. We've been looking at credit scores, how they're calculated. We've looked at credit banking, business credit. Let's actually take a look at a real case study. I like this one that came in, and so let's take a look. Let us take a look. So here the income is $6,250. The expenses are $2,900. All right. The available credit is $4,500, but the balance that they're carrying is $3,500 approximately. Look at that, the credit interest rate, 32%. Now they want to pay off a $12,000 loan, $12,800 or $89.29. This is a 10-year loan started back in August of 2014. Don't know the interest rate on the loan. The payment is $192.91. So here's the current situation. The net income is now $2,000. The spouse just recently became unemployed because of the COVID-19 crisis. The other spouse still has 2 jobs. So this income right here was prior to the spouse losing the job. So, you know, if you look at this and we were just to do a simple calculation, I mean, it'd be really easy. Just pull out your handy dandy calculator on your phone and you take your income, $6,250, right? And we subtract out our expenses of $2,900 and we see a cash flow of $3,350. Well, I mean, if all you're trying to do is knock out a $12,000 loan, we just take our $12,889.29. We take that loan and we divide that by $3,350, and we see we'll knock that out in 4 months. 4 months, boom, done. Okay, next. But the situation got a little interesting, didn't it? So now this income has dropped down to $2,000. Well, now we've gone from being in cash flow territory to being in negative cash flow territory. So let's see. So currently I have 2 jobs. Curbside, go to specialists at Olive Garden, pay fluctuates depending on tips. So making anywhere from $500 to $600 months there. This is a public school teacher who's making $1,289 a month doing that. And just accepted an offer to work for another company. Estimated income at $43,000 annual salary. They believe that they should net around 1,400 to 1,500 a month. I'm not sure where they come up with that. They don't know what their tax bracket they're in or what the state taxes will be. That seems a little bit low to me. But I mean, it depends. I mean, how much money are they putting away in a 401k? How much money is going into medical, dental, vision? You know, there's all kinds of benefits that are going in. If we're just looking at taxes, I think that, and you got to calculate your FICA as well and your Medicare, Medicaid, but that might be a little low. I think it might be closer to 2,000. But anyway, or even more than that. Let's take a look. Taking the job. Oh, okay. So there's job might be less stressful than being a teacher. Haha. Okay. Okay. But he's not going to start till the June 29th. So here we are in April. We've got to make it a whole month before we start making that money. Okay. And then there's the bills. I did take the liberty of adding this all up. So the math was correct. The monthly bills do add up to the right amounts. And then the available credit cards, the interest rate. Looks like the loan that he wants to pay off, just based off of what he wrote here, is the student loan. Okay. So looks like they're going to get a tax return. The filing, they're under $150,000. They probably qualify for that COVID-19 help. I don't know if they have kids. They should get somewhere between $2,400 to $3,400 there. And then, you know, I'm also looking at this thinking that the wife, if she just recently lost her job, might qualify for unemployment. So there's some help there. So there's a couple of situations there. So the income might not be as bad as we think. Oh, so good. I'm glad we got some people weighing in. So since we don't see any kids listed here, let's assume that there are no kids. And we'll say that it's $1,200 per person, so $2,400 per couple. And that might be coming in this month. And it should be coming in around mid-month if they have electronically filed their taxes. If they paid their taxes by mailing it in, then who knows when that check's going to get mailed. But
Hey guys, so looks like we've lost some type of feed. Just give me 2 seconds here. We're gonna get us back up and running just momentarily. But man, Joseph, some serious bombs that he's dropping of knowledge, credit banking max. So we'll go back a little bit, and once he resets, he gets back on the line, then we will continue the party. But this would be a great opportunity. If you guys have any questions, anything at all, go ahead and start to put your questions through, and we will start to stack those up and answer it. So what he's doing is he's just starting to go over a case study of somebody, and this gentleman, let me see where Joseph's at. So make sure that he's coming back on board here. All right. But I hope everybody's having a safe night out there. I hope you guys are doing good. And we'll continue this party here shortly. Just takes a few more minutes here. You know, technology, it's great when it works. So let's see here. Let's see if we got any questions so far. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff that's been coming through. Let's see. All right, so Joseph just sent me connection that he is out. All right, guys, so his internet is out. What we are going to do is we are going to go ahead and finalize and end this call. But actually, give me a few seconds here. Let me see if I can pull it up. I don't have access. No, I can't get access to a screen right now. All right. All right, everybody. So let me pop on here real quick. Give me a second. All right. Hey, everybody. Ray Fleming here. Oh, look at this. I'm on TV, guys. No, this is absolutely awesome. So because we've had a little minor technical difficulty, it looks like internet service where Joseph is, he just sent me a text, actually dropped. And so looks like but instead of keeping you guys hanging around in here, I don't have access to the computer right now that has all that documentation. We got through a bulk of the training for tonight. So what we're going to do is, as soon as we get back up and running, I'm going to release a case study on this. If you go over to, actually, if you want to go ahead and text, if you text credit to 602, I'm going to put that on here. If you text credit to CREDIT, if you text credit to 60249, is it 49722? Wouldn't that be good if I could remember our text number? It's been so long since we used it. 497. You know what? I better figure this out. What is our text number? 2257. Thank you, my beautiful wife. All right. 602-497-2257. Text credit. Now, what's great is you'll get a link for a book on an ebook on how to build business credit. But what's even better is I will be able to send you guys out a text blast when we go live again with the update case study. And so when we come back, you know, I don't know if it'll be tonight or tomorrow, we'll come back live with a case study and really dive into the strategization of this person or this individual's situation. I know because they were out there, they're looking forward to it too. So we're going to come back with the case study, make sure that you guys have the ability to put the input in into, hey, how are we going to handle this situation? We just started diving into that. But go ahead and once again, text credit to 602-497-2257. And we will see you guys in a little bit. Other than that, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Good night, and God bless.